Hello, folks. I'm Josh McGee. Welcome to another episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, man, it has felt like it has been an extremely long week, but I'm still riding high after last weekend's result went my way. I'm very excited to get into it and give my thoughts on the matter. Of course, it's a very exciting time in soccer. The Euros start up next week. There's a lot of great soccer going on right now. And to wrap up the show this week, I've brought in another great local guest. But again, very excited for this week's episode. Here in the home studio, wearing my U.S. Soccer men's shirt. Obviously, they're getting things underway in the CONCACAF Nations League. I'll talk about that on next week's episode once that has wrapped up fully. But, of course, behind me, rolling with double Chelsea jerseys once again in honor of the huge win this past Saturday. And that, of course, is where, like I said, I have to start off the show. While everyone is pretty much already aware, even non-soccer fans at this point, as to what went down last weekend, just to reiterate, Chelsea were successful in capturing their second ever Champions League trophy in club history, holding on to beat fellow English club Manchester City by a score of 1-0. Kai Havertz was the one to score the decisive goal, receiving a through ball from, I believe, Mason Mount. It was just him and the goalkeeper, Ederson. Ederson came charging out of his net. Havertz was able to kind of nick it past him just enough to get it just between him and the goal, and he was able to slot home his finish into the open net. This was one of your more entertaining 1-0 matches. It had a lot of ebbs and flows to it. Chelsea were the ones who started the match on the front foot. They were able to create a couple of chances that just couldn't put them away. And from then on out, City were the ones in control. Even through that first goal, it was kind of against the run of play for Chelsea. City were able to create a ton of chances in this match, but every time one of the City players was able to get into the box and get a sight of goal, a Chelsea player was there to either tackle and steal the ball or to block the shot. Just a tremendous performance by the defense there. And then by the time you get into the middle of the second half and you had that injury to Kevin De Bruyne, who had to be subbed off after a really tough collision with Antonio Rudiger, it just felt like it would be Chelsea's day. Chelsea were able to hold on to win the match and put an exclamation point on their remarkable turnaround. Despite their underperforming offensive stars, Chelsea were able to save their season once again by firing a manager mid-season and bringing in someone who was able to turn it all around. It's amazing to think about the parallels between this win for Chelsea and their win in 2012. Back then, it was Andre Boas who was getting fired in mid-season, and Roberto Di Matteo who came in and was able to help lead Chelsea to a Champions League victory. This time around, it's Frank Lampard, who had a great start to his Chelsea career as a manager, but things took a turn for the worse. Sacked in mid-season, Thomas Tuchel, after losing last year's Champions League final, is brought in just as the head of a remarkable turnaround, especially on the defensive front. Chelsea caught fire there in the middle of the season and were able to ride it all the way through to a Champions League final victory. And again, also you think about who they played in those Champions League finals. Back then, it was a generational type of Bayern Munich team in Germany at Bayern Munich's home stadium. They were able to come away with the victory. Then of course, this year, playing a Manchester City team who had been working tirelessly to get to this point, to get to the final. Pep Guardiola, the best manager in the world, all of that talent, but still, this time around, it's once again Chelsea coming away with the victory. Chelsea were considered the underdog in both those matches, not just from a betting perspective, but also that was just the public perception. But I can understand why it would be difficult to see Chelsea as an underdog in any situation, not just because of their status in the EPL, but their status in Europe as a whole. They're one of the biggest clubs in the world. So to see them in that role, it's kind of tough. It's also tough because this is probably a club that more people like to hate than they like to cheer for. But in my opinion, I do think that this past Chelsea team had a lot more endearing qualities than previous ones who were successful in Europe. Just take a look at the starting 11 from last Saturday's match. It was a mixture of players who came from humble beginnings and those who were looking to redeem themselves for a tough season. Look at Edouard Mendy, the goalkeeper. 7 years ago, he was unemployed and was thinking about quitting the sport altogether. Now, he's the first African goalkeeper to win the Champions League, and he kept the most clean sheets in the tournament. Just a remarkable turnaround and a great story. N'Golo Kante. I can't find anybody who doesn't like N'Golo Kante. He started out his career in the second and third divisions of French football. Now, he's won the top prize for both club and country and is widely considered to be the best defensive midfielder in the world. Antonio Rudiger. He couldn't get a match in the first part of the season under Frank Lampard. He was basically banished. There was talk of him being sold by the club. But Thomas Tuchel comes in, starts him right away. And from that point on, he could be considered Chelsea's best defender down the stretch. He was just amazing, not just in the Champions League final, but also in the matches leading up to that. And again, just had a great season overall once he got the time and once he was given the confidence by the new manager. Then you look up top to the three biggest names on Chelsea's roster, and that, of course, would be Timo Werner, Kai Havertz, and Christian Pulisic. All of them went through high-profile struggles this season, especially Werner, for what the price tag was, for how much hype he got. He came in and was very underwhelming. But Tuchel continued to stick by them. He continued to put them out there, continued to believe in them, that they would come up with some big goals down the stretch, and that's what happened. Werner, Havertz, and Pulisic had major contributions during this Champions League run down the stretch. They were each able to come up with certain goals, and of course, Havertz, the biggest one, scoring in that Champions League final. Despite the outside noise, despite the overwhelming criticism, they stuck to their guns. They were able to come up with some huge goals down the stretch. And at the end of the day, even though they had struggles throughout the entirety of the season, it's not really going to be remembered as much because at the end of the day, they won the biggest prize in all of Europe, and they were able to contribute on that road and, of course, in the match itself. Now, I get it. If you're not a Chelsea fan or if you despise Chelsea, I probably haven't convinced you today to embrace a lovable underdog version of this club. But at least from my own selfish supporter perspective, I'm going to admire this particular team for overcoming their own self-created shortcomings to have a great season and to compete in that Champions League final and put together a performance that was worthy of the great Chelsea teams over this past decade. It's just an amazing finish to the season to see these guys all come together in this system proposed by Thomas Tuchel for him to get over that hump and to win the Champions League final after losing it the previous year. I think it's a really great story and a great accomplishment for these guys and for this club. Their second Champions League trophy here, with the last one being in 2012. Again, just was an amazing match. And of course, a great result, at least from my perspective as a Chelsea supporter, that they were able to come away with this victory. I think there's a lot of lessons that could be learned from this win by Chelsea. I think the biggest one being you got to have the right manager and right system in place, that it's not always just about the talent, the players out on the pitch. Sometimes they're the ones that need the direction, they need the confidence, and they need the vision. That's what Tuchel was able to provide here. And that's never too late to fix your season. Hiring someone in the middle of it to completely turn it around, to get them to that point, bring them all the way to the Champions League final. It's never too late to do it. And of course, it's not how you start, but how you finish. All right, like I said, Euro 2020 kicks off next week. It's really cool to think that by this time next Friday, it'll be Italy taking on Turkey. So I want to get to a couple of news stories that broke this week, as well as some action from some of the international friendlies that some of these teams were participating in. So I want to start off talking about the English national team and one player in particular, and that would be Liverpool right back Trent Alexander-Arnold. After days of speculation that he wouldn't even make England's Euro 2020 team, Alexander-Arnold was included in the squad and subsequently started England's friendly in midweek versus Austria. However, late on in the match, after clearing a ball, he landed a little bit awkwardly and had to be taken off. It has since been discovered that he suffered a muscle tear that has ruled him out up to 6 weeks, and he's going to miss out on Euro 2020. Very unfortunate occurrence for Alexander-Arnold. He's one of the bright young players in this game. I think he would have been England's best option at right back, especially for his offensive talents and ability to put the ball into the box. So it's a real tough blow for them and a tough blow for him. I know he had been facing possibly not even making the squad. That would have been a terrible decision there by Gareth Southgate. He was included, but unfortunately, this injury happens. Just a very, very unfortunate occurrence. I think England will be fine going forward. They obviously have a lot of options there. You've got Kieran Trippier, you got Kyle Walker, you got Reece James, but still, Alexander-Arnold, I think, would have been the best of those four. And yeah, it just stinks that we won't get to see him at this summer's tournament. Okay, moving over to the Belgium national team. After suffering multiple facial fractures in the Champions League final last week, Belgium midfielder Kevin De Bruyne is in serious doubt to start Belgium's opening match at Euro 2020 versus Russia. It's going to take a couple weeks more of recovery, and of course, he's going to have to wear a mask once he eventually gets back on the pitch. He's actually potentially in danger of missing multiple group stage matches. Now, I think Belgium, they've definitely got the talent. They can withstand this type of injury, and I also think their group isn't as tough as some of the others, so I think they're going to be okay. But it's important to get De Bruyne into that side as quickly as possible. He's their best overall player, one of the best playmakers out there in Europe, so they definitely got to get him in there, get him acclimated when they can. But it looks like eventually he's going to get out on the pitch, but it could be a little bit of a delay. In other Belgium news, French legend Thierry Henry has rejoined the Belgium coaching staff. He was an assistant coach with them back from 2016 to 2018, including a part of their World Cup run to the semifinals in 2018. He has rejoined that coaching staff under Roberto Martinez. Of course, as we know, Henry had recently resigned as the head coach of CF Montreal and MLS. Now he's getting back into coaching here. Again, having a legend of that caliber in your squad and a part of your coaching staff, it's going to do wonders for them. He was very successful in his last tenure, so I'm excited to see him back here helping out the Belgium national team. you got to think someone like a Romelu Lukaku is going to be very excited to have him back and see what he can add with his advice. So again, very exciting times there with Belgium. Hopefully De Bruyne is okay when he returns. And of course, also the addition of Henry will be a very positive one for Belgium. Okay, like I said, we got our first look at how potentially some of the favorites at Euro 2020 will be lining up. There's some international friendlies this week. Those are going to go through the weekend and into the early parts of next week as teams prepare for the tournament. So let's take a look at some of those favorites. France, the reigning World Cup champions, were able to beat Wales 3-0 behind goals from Mbappe, Griezmann, and Ousmane Dembele. Karim Benzema actually started the match up top with Mbappe and Griezmann. He actually missed a penalty in this match. But I think once they got going, France looked like their typical French self. They were able to move the ball up the pitch. Wales didn't get many chances in this match. Of course, going forward with all that talent, they were able to put up multiple goals. Like I mentioned earlier, England played Austria. They were able to hold on for a 1-0 victory behind a goal from Arsenal's Bukayo Saka. It was interesting to see the lineup of this squad. Of course, they're expecting big things from guys like Harry Kane, Jadon Sancho. So those guys are going to have to get some support from the guys behind them. Thought England, they took a real long time to get going. They struggled to break down Austria's defense, but in the end of the day, kept a clean sheet, got the victory. So it's a good result there for England. Elsewhere, Netherlands versus Scotland. Very entertaining match. The Netherlands got 2 goals from Memphis Depay, but they had to settle for a 2-2 draw versus Scotland. Still some problems there with Frank de Boer and his system in terms of the defense of the Netherlands. They've got talent back there, but in terms of the philosophy, they're going to have to get on the same page here before the Euros. But still, going forward, Memphis Depay is going to be one of the better players to watch at that tournament. So very impressive performance from him. And Scotland, it's a good showing here, going up against one of the top sides in Europe to get a couple of goals there and to have this type of level performance right before the tournament. So again, very entertaining match there as well. And lastly, Germany were in action versus Denmark, but they also had to settle for a draw. This one was 1-1. They created a lot of chances in this match. Stop me if you heard this before, but they were unable to put them away. They were up 1-0 early, but they were unable to make it 2-0, and eventually they conceded there to Denmark. So again, some warning signs there for Germany. They're trying out a lot of young players in this side. They're trying to mix everybody together to get the right combination there for Joachim Löw in his last major tournament with Germany. So we'll have to see how that develops. But again, these are just international friendlies. Teams are just trying to figure out the right combination of players to start for that opening match. But still, very excited that we're getting to see these teams in action right before, see who could potentially be starting and who could end up, eventually being left out and not see much time at this tournament. Still, very exciting time. We're basically a week away from the tournament. Very excited and looking forward to starting up my coverage of the actual matches next week. Okay, for this next segment, I kind of wanted to go through some of the coaching changes in the Big 5 leagues across Europe because there's been a lot of turnover over this past week. A lot of big names have left. A lot of big names have been brought in, and I kind of wanted to go through some of the major decisions for you all and give my thoughts on them, as well as look ahead potentially to next season for those clubs. Starting off with, of course, Real Madrid. For the second time in 3 seasons, French legend Zinedine Zidane has left his post as manager there at Real Madrid, citing a lack of trust with the club and also leaked messages to the media. Madrid have opted to bring in one of their former managers to replace Zidane, and that would be Carlos Ancelotti, who has been managing Everton in the English Premier League for the past couple of seasons. When Ancelotti last managed Real Madrid, they won the Champions League, they won the Copa del Rey, as well as the UEFA Super Cup during his tenure. So once again, we're back where we had been a couple seasons ago with Zidane leaving Real Madrid for a variety of different reasons. I know it had been a particularly difficult season. They fell just short in La Liga. They fell just short in the Champions League. And also it seems like they've hit that point with their roster where they're going to have to go through some major turnover. They bring in Ancelotti back. He was pretty successful during his tenure with Madrid. He was particularly successful in getting the best out of Gareth Bale, who's going to be returning to the club after his loan with Tottenham ended. So that's an interesting dynamic there. But like I said, you could see Sergio Ramos leave this summer. You could see other guys like Luka Modric, who are getting up there in age, leave this summer. Potentially guys like Rafael Varane get bought by some of the other bigger clubs in Europe. So there could be a lot more changes to come at Real Madrid. But Ancelotti, he's been a solid manager during his career. And of course, he's familiar with Madrid, the pressures there, and everything else, of course, as well. Some of the players that are already there. So it's not a bad get, but we'll have to see if Madrid can find a way to get back to the top of the European structure there in terms of the Champions League and, of course, in Spain with La Liga. But it was an interesting situation with Zidane. Don't know if he's going to get back into managing, but still a lot of changes over there at Real Madrid. Vice versa, when you look at what's going on with Barcelona, they're going to be keeping Ronald Koeman for next season. I don't know about that decision. I would put him down as one of the favorites to get sacked early on in his tenure there next season. But we'll see. Interesting times there with the top clubs in La Liga. Okay, up next, going to talk about Juventus. Former Juventus great Andrea Pirlo was sacked by the club last week after failing to defend the club's Serie A title. His replacement is a familiar one, and quite a good one, I might add. And that would be Massimiliano Allegri, who took Juventus to the Champions League final twice during his tenure, as well as winning the league title in each of the 5 seasons he was manager. So if you're going to replace a club legend in this way and try to have a bounce back season next year, no better man to do it than Allegri. He was really successful with Juventus. He was highly sought after during this off time. He had numerous amounts of offers, but wanted to take some time off, wanted to kind of get away from everything that was going on after his last tenure with Juventus. And it's funny that he finds himself right back at that club who desperately need it. They were able to get into the Champions League, but they barely eked in. They were not successful in the Champions League for this past season, so they need a little bit of a boost. And Allegri, I definitely consider to be one of the top managers in the world. He'll get to work with Ronaldo, some of the other talent there with Juventus that he hasn't had a chance to work with before. So I'm interested to see if he can come right back in and get them back to the top of not just Serie A, but also in the mix for the Champions League. But still, not a bad replacement for Pirlo, who I don't think, didn't do a terrible job, but in terms of the rate of success and the results, just wasn't able to get it done. And when you got Cristiano Ronaldo, you need to be able to be at the top of your respective league. So just wasn't the right man for the job. Of course, he's going to have to get some more experience, I think, before he becomes a top manager. But still, getting Allegri back, great move by Juventus. Okay, the next stop on the coaching carousel has to deal with a couple of league champions from this past season. After winning the titles in their respective leagues, Inter Milan in Serie A and Lille in League One will both have new managers next season. Inter manager Antonio Conte resigned from his post a couple weeks ago, with rumors speculating that it was going to be because the club were going to have to sell off a couple of their good players to offset some of the operation costs that they had to endure during the pandemic. Didn't want to be a part of that. Didn't want to sell off some good players, so he is now out. On the other side, Lille manager Christophe Galtier is leaving the club after leading them to their first league title since 2011, also potentially due to the fact that the club might have to sell off some of their best players. So a couple of unfortunate situations there. You just have your best season, you win the league title, you qualified for Champions League next season, and then because of the way the club is set up and because of what's been going on over the past couple seasons, you're going to have to sell off some of your best players, and that's not a great motivation for managers, top managers, to stick around. We know with Conte, he's used to being moved around. He's been at several different Italian clubs, and of course, he led Chelsea to a Premier League title, and then he was axed the following season. So he's used to this type of situation. Of course, he's going to have numerous offers on the table. I believe he's currently in talks right now with Tottenham over potentially taking over as their manager. That would be quite the get for Tottenham if they were able to accomplish it. And then with Lille, it's not like with Inter Milan, who are a pretty big club. Lille, not so much. And of course, you're going to have all those other clubs across Europe coming for their best players. It's a tough situation for them. But still, doesn't take away from the fact of the accomplishments of the league title for both these clubs this past season. I'm sure there'll be managers out there who want to be a part of it, who want to have Champions League football next year. So I bet you they land on their feet. But still, an interesting situation, seeing a couple of top teams from this past season losing their manager. My last story for this segment has to deal with the German Bundesliga and what is going on there. Despite finishing in the top half of the table, 7 of the top 8 clubs there in the Bundesliga will have new managers next season. And it's actually an elaborate game of musical chairs, with most of those clubs actually hiring managers from some of the other top 7 or 8 clubs there in Germany. It's just amazing. We had already talked a little bit about a few weeks ago, Bayern Munich hiring Julian Nagelsmann from RB Leipzig, who I believe still don't have a manager. I don't have all the details in terms of who went where, but stuff like, Dortmund hiring Borussia Mönchengladbach's manager. You had Eintracht Frankfurt's manager moving on to one of the other German clubs there. Again, Wolfsburg, Bayer Leverkusen, Borussia Mönchengladbach. It's just a crazy mess right now. And it's really funny to think that these clubs had great finishes to the season. Most of them were able to finish in the top half and close to the Champions League spots or in the Champions League, and yet they're still going to have a new manager next season. Obviously, Leipzig can't help it. Bayern Munich, that's quite the step up. But still, some of these other clubs, it's definitely looking like they either went sideways or in terms of the moves were very quite interesting. But still, going to be a lot of turnover there. We'll have to see how it affects the top of the table, how it affects those teams in the Champions League and in the Europa League. But still, I just find that interesting that most of the clubs at the top of the German Bundesliga will have new managers leading them next season. Okay, let's dip into some soccer and America talk here. Going to start off with MLS and the big report from The Athletic this week that stated that MLS is seeking to launch their own lower division league that would basically be a pathway for the MLS Next Academy teams to the first team rosters. The league would debut in 2022 with over half of the clubs in MLS fielding teams. This is a huge, news break. I think basically how the article basically plays it out is that this league would be sort of a third division of U.S. soccer. That, of course, kind of contrasts with what's going on with the USL. That's kind of what is embraced right now as the second division, and then USL League One, and further on down the other lower divisions of soccer. This seems to be in direct competition of that, which I don't think would be a good move. We've seen the development of the USL over the past few years, getting the huge TV deal with ESPN+. We've seen all the games that have been played on national television. We just had the first USL League One match played on national television. It would stink to have something kind of derail all of that momentum there. I really wish, as do I think most fans, that U.S. soccer and the MLS would just find a way to have this relationship with the USL, officially put it together, have those lower divisions of soccer, and figure it out from there. So I don't know how this is going to exactly work. I know we've all been frustrated over the years with the MLS, two teams in the USL, but I don't think that this would be the best solution to that problem. So we're just going to have to see. Obviously, this is rumors for right now. We know about MLS Next and what that has been able to do. Of course, St. Louis people know that St. Louis City SC are going to be getting into that. We already have St. Louis FC Academy participating in MLS Next. So we'll just have to see on that front where the developments go. So it's too early to tell right now, but in terms of how it's going to work, I don't know. I'm a little bit worried about what it would do to the USL and what it would do to U.S. soccer here as a whole. Next up, let's get to Inter Miami CF, who were handed a record $2 million fine by MLS, as well as a reduction in allocation money spanning across multiple seasons for violating the league's salary budget and roster regulations. This was a result of MLS's investigation over Miami's signing of Blaise Matuidi last season, and they ended up finding violations concerning 5 players on Miami's roster. Former sporting director Paul McDonough was also suspended through the 2022 season. He was working with Atlanta United FC this year, and he has subsequently been fired. So again, an ugly situation here. We've known about Miami. They've had a tough time coming into the league. They've had a very weird kind of set of operations here. They are fined in violation of the policies of MLS, record $2 million fine. That allocation money reduction, I believe, over the next couple of seasons will be 11.9%, basically 12% of their operating budget there. So it is going to be a bit of a blow for what Miami can do. That, of course, is significant because they're one of those top destination clubs in MLS, or they're seeking to be, of course, with David Beckham at the helm there as owner. So it's a big deal in terms of what they got caught doing, the violations that they had concerning all of those players. And yeah, something to look out for going forward, how it's going to affect them. They've had a dip in form here as of late over the past couple weeks. So we'll just have to see. Miami getting caught here, doing something wrong, and we'll have to see what the impact is going forward. Okay, enough of the negativity. Let's get to some action from last weekend. We're going to start off with Nashville SC getting 2 late goals from Hani Mukhtar to salvage a 2-2 draw versus Atlanta United FC and maintain their unbeaten start to the season. It was a very entertaining match there. Nashville leaving it late, getting those couple of goals. Good battle between 2 of those clubs in the middle of the Eastern Conference table. And yeah, Nashville still unbeaten on the season. Then you had NYC FC scoring a goal in the 90th minute despite being down a man to beat LAFC by a score of 2-1. NYC FC, one of the top scoring clubs in all of MLS, I believe still the top scoring club in the Eastern Conference, able to get it done despite being down a man. LAFC, now we're at this point where we have to start asking questions. Yes, they have Carlos Vela and Diego Rossi back, but that defense, do they have the horses back there in order to keep it locked down and to compete with some of these top clubs? They didn't get it done here. Another loss, so we'll have to see if the heat continues to get hotter on Bob Bradley's seat. But right now, yeah, LAFC trying to find their way in the Western Conference, whereas NYFC firing on all cylinders, at least on the offensive end over there in the East. You had Sporting KC score 3 goals in the second half and were able to hold on for a 3-2 win versus the Houston Dynamo. Another impressive performance there by Sporting KC. Alan Pulido, like I've been saying, I think one of the top strikers in MLS. He's gotten on fire over these past couple weeks and has Sporting KC near the top of the table. And lastly, just a huge result this past Sunday. You had the Philadelphia Union crushing the Portland Timbers 3-0. Amazing result there. They've been on fire recently there in the Eastern Conference. They got that great striker, what's his name, Jabilko or something like that, who's been on good form. Really impressive result over a Portland team that was coming off of that win versus the LA Galaxy. So few impressive results there. We've hit an interesting part of the MLS schedule. There's not going to be any games really the next couple weeks. This is one of the breaks that they kind of put into their schedule at the beginning of the year. I think it's going to be like Sporting KC versus Austin FC. It's going to be the only match here for the next couple weeks. So a nice little break for these clubs to kind of reset, look at where they're at, and potentially here, get some of that energy back and make a run coming right out of the gate when we pick things back up. So again, some interesting results there from last weekend in MLS. And yeah, after a little bit of a break, we'll get right back up and see who can come out of the gate flying here in this next part of the season. Okay, I want to move on to talk about the NWSL, and I want to start off with last weekend's results. It started on Friday night with the North Carolina Courage absolutely demolishing Racing Louisville FC by a score of 5-0. You had Sam Mewis making her first start for North Carolina after returning from her tenure with Manchester City. This was an offensive onslaught. They got an early goal from Abby Erceg. In the first half, Louisville were unable to find the equalizer, and eventually the gates just flew open there late on in the second half, and North Carolina were able to get those 4 goals. Quite an amazing offensive display from the Courage. The following day, you had the Houston Dash get a late goal from Christy Mewis to beat the Chicago Red Stars 2-1. I definitely think that the Dash are on the right path to figuring things out and getting back to that form that they showed last year in the Challenge Cup. Then you had Portland Thorns FC, who were losers of 2 straight, get a stunning goal from Crystal Dunn, which was enough to beat New Jersey New York Gotham FC by a score of 1-0. The first place Orlando Pride beat Kansas City 1-0 on Alex Morgan's league-leading 4th goal of the season. And then lastly, the Washington Spirit were able to beat a returning Rose Lavelle and OL Reign by a score of 1-0 on an own goal from Megan Rapinoe. So then again, some interesting results there in the NWSL. Portland, they get back on track with that win. You have the Orlando Pride, who are riding quite the hot streak from Alex Morgan, and bodes well for them. And of course, the U.S. Women's National Team this summer, if she's on this good of form. And then, of course, you had the Spirit. They've bounced back a little bit here in the regular season. They didn't have a great NWSL Challenge Cup, but they've been doing much better here in the regular season, kind of halting that momentum that the Reign had coming off of that huge win versus Portland. As far as this weekend is concerned, a lot of good matchups to look out for here, but the biggest one has to be the first place Orlando Pride versus second place Washington Spirit. Always good to see a top of the table clash, and it's exciting based on what both of these clubs are doing. Right now with the Pride, you've got Alex Morgan, you've got Sydney Leroux, both on great form and scoring a lot of goals there. With the Spirit, they're still trying to figure things out maybe a little bit, but still, they're a very exciting team. Of course, Trinity Rodman, great rookie. Excited to see her once again out there as well. So again, really good matchup there at the top of the table. I'd have to give the advantage a little bit to the Pride with what they've been doing, but still an important result. If Washington are able to get the win here, I don't know if they would hop over Orlando based off of goal difference, but still would leave no room there on points here at this point in the NWSL season. Okay, now let's get to what was a really busy week in the USL Championship. I want to start off with last weekend's results, the ones that caught my eye the most. Starting off with Indy 11, getting 2 goals on 2 penalties from Jordan Hamilton in order to beat Louisville City FC by a score of 2-1. Rio Grande Valley FC Toros got an 89th minute equalizer from Juan Azúcar to draw 1-1 with their rivals San Antonio FC. You had LA Galaxy 2 win a 7-goal thriller with their in-state rivals Orange County SC by a score of 4-3. And lastly, San Diego Loyal were finally able to pick up their first win of the season, beating Las Vegas Lights by a score of 2-1 on a late equalizer from former St. Louis FC player Corey Herzog. So kind of looking at some of the tables there in the USL Championship, that Central Division is tight. Indy 11 and Louisville battling it out there. They were able to knock Louisville down below the playoff line as of this moment. Very impressive result there for Indy. That division also, with all the Texas teams, has been very entertaining. It was a good back and forth affair between Rio Grande Valley and San Antonio. And of course, then, yeah, go look up the highlights of that LA Galaxy Orange County match. That was fantastic to watch. Some great late drama there. Yeah, what LA Galaxy 2 have been able to do so far this season, they are right up there in that division alongside Phoenix Rising FC. So it's been very cool to see them kind of push them a little bit. And I can't wait to see both those two go at it at some point here in the season. Then we had a pretty full week of midweek fixtures. I want to start off by talking about Pittsburgh Riverhounds SC. Last week, they had a 3-0 victory over New York Red Bulls 2, and they were able to follow it up here this week with a 3-2 win versus Loudoun United FC, with former St. Louis FC player Russell Cicerone scoring in both matches. Been one of the top scorers so far in the USL Championship. Very happy to see Russell continuing to have success. And yeah, it looks like Pittsburgh have at least found a little bit of something and gotten back on the right track after a really tough start to the season. Then in the Central Division, you had a couple of interesting results. Indy 11 dropped points in a 1-1 draw with Oklahoma City Energy FC. And then FC Tulsa, once again suffering another big defeat, this time at the hands of Sporting Kansas City 2 by a score of 4-1. So again, like I said, that Central Division, it's the tightest one in all of the USL Championship. You've got Indy and Birmingham at the top, and then you've got teams like Louisville, Atlanta, and Tulsa kind of fiddling around there in those other spots. So it's going to be a very entertaining season, I think, in that division with all those teams doing pretty good. Interesting to see a couple of those teams here drop results in midweek, but still very entertaining so far in the USL Championship. As far as this weekend is concerned, you've got Charlotte Independence versus Tampa Bay Rowdies on Saturday. The Rowdies have been the top team in the USL Championship. They've beaten every single team in front of them. I'm expecting nothing different here, but I do think that Charlotte can give them a pretty decent game. Then on Sunday, you've got Birmingham Legion FC versus FC Tulsa. Nice contrasting styles there in that matchup. You also got the Miami FC facing off versus Rio Grande Valley FC Toros. Miami, they've done a pretty nice job here at the start of the season. Of course, Rio Grande, they're near the top of the table there in their division. Should be an entertaining match there. And lastly, another Central Division matchup. Atlanta United 2 will be going up against Louisville City FC. So again, looking forward to those matchups. USL Championship off to a great start, and we'll have to see in terms of those close matchups where teams can kind of pick up some points in the table. Most of the top teams will be going up against lesser competition, I think, this weekend, and should be able to pick up 3 more points and continue to hold ground there at the top of their respective tables. Okay, now let's get to some St. Louis soccer news, and got to start off with a story that kind of flew under the radar a little bit until it happened on Wednesday, and that would be MLS Commissioner Don Garber coming to St. Louis to view the construction site of St. Louis City SC's brand new stadium. Garber visited the site with members of the ownership group and the front office, as well as, I believe, County Executive Sam Page. Garber and the ownership group also stopped by Perino, which of course is St. Louis City SC's first sponsor. Garber's been very impressed with the progress City have made on the stadium and also the inclusiveness that they've had with the project. So really cool to see Garber come to town, look at how the stadium is going, which I got my first look at it a couple weeks ago, my first trip downtown in like ages. And it was really cool to see. I only saw it from afar, but just to see the progress that has undergone and to think that this time next year, it's pretty much going to be finished. That's a very exciting prospect to think about. But again, very excited to see MLS's interest in City right now, even though it's just a construction site and everything that is going on. But still, very good, very positive results so far from that group. And of course, you know, Garber coming in and seeing everything. Had to like the Perino sponsor. I know he's a big dog lover, so that's kind of cool. But still, nothing but good things from Garber and from St. Louis City right now about the progress with the stadium. Next up, former St. Louis FC Academy product and Nashville SC center back Jack Maher was loaned out to USL Championship side San Diego Loyal for the remainder of the 2021 season. Maher had yet to feature for Nashville so far this season. So yeah, it's a little bit of a tough break for Jack. People thought that he would get an opportunity with Nashville this season, especially when someone like a Walker Zimmerman would go out for U.S. men's national team duty. But here, at least, he's going to get some consistent playing time. I know that his previous USL Championship tenure was in Charlotte, and that was pretty successful. So here with San Diego, who need a lot of help as of this moment, he'll get the playing time that he needs to continue his development. I got to think that at some point he will be recalled by Nashville, especially this summer, to help out, especially if there's an injury or something comes up. But still, important step for his development, get some consistent playing time. And yeah, where San Diego is located, should have an excellent opportunity to play some high-profile teams in some big matches. So good luck to Jack on his new venture there with San Diego. And yeah, hoping for another good season for him, and hopefully he'll get recalled to Nashville soon. Okay, moving on to St. Louis Scott Gallagher, who were able to pick up a point in their first road match of the season in a 0-0 draw versus Green Bay Voyagers. Important of note, Rogers State forward Jordan Watson and Indiana defender Lucas Hummel were able to get their first playing time of the season in this match. So pretty solid result there for St. Louis Scott Gallagher, at least to be able to pick up a point in their first road match. I know obviously coming off of that big win versus FC Wichita, they would have liked to put away a couple of goals and finish off some of their chances, but still important to see the defense keep another clean sheet. I know goalkeeper Patrick Schulte was able to make a couple of saves in this match. And again, like we've been saying, they're still getting some moving parts, a couple new guys coming in this week to get some time. There'll be a couple more guys coming in here in the next few weeks or so to implement themselves with the squad. So again, it's important that they were able to have a couple of good results here in a row. I believe their next match, they are on the road in midweek next week versus FC Wichita before coming home on the 12th on Saturday to play, I believe, the Chicago team there in their division. So again, good signs for St. Louis Scott Gallagher. They continue to develop, they continue to pick up positive results and continue to move forward here in USL League Two. Okay, for this week's show, I brought in another local St. Louis soccer guest. Last week, we talked to the head coach of Fire and Ice Soccer Academy's WPSL team in Lindsay Eversmeyer. This week is the head coach of the other women's team who is set to begin their season this weekend. Hope you enjoy. Well, I'm honored to be joined by this week the head coach of the St. Louis Lions women's team who is preparing for the beginning of the 2021 WPSL season with their first couple matches happening this week. Head coach Geoff Lorimier, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the time.
Awesome. Well, it's very exciting to have you guys back playing soccer here this weekend. Will be the start of your season. Talk to me a little bit about these past couple weeks getting ready. How have preparations been going?
Yeah, it's full go now. You know, it's you take the year off and you realize what you missed, and then you get back into it, and you have such a short time to get ready. So everything's kind of been 100 miles an hour. We got a late start due to the colleges playing their spring seasons and players come in at different times because of that. So it's been fast paced, but since we've missed it, it's been a blast.
So I know talking a few months ago, I talked to Tony Glavin about how you guys have been doing, and I know we were all disappointed to hear about so much the postponement, but that the men's team was taking a year off. But obviously you guys will be having your season. So talk to me a little bit about the stuff behind the scenes in terms of ensuring that the women's team could play this year. How were you able to get it done?
Yeah, definitely. We just looked at everything from the budgets to personnel to staffing, and tried to figure out how we could at least bring one of the squads back. Obviously, with the men's team, it's kind of an established squad. This would have been their 15th season in the USL, whereas the women's team we're still trying to create that brand, and so we felt that in order to continue that, that was kind of the program that we wanted to focus on at this time. Budget-wise, just worked out as well that the travel on the women's side versus the men's side isn't quite as costly. And the other thing that we have going for us on the women's side is, 95% of our players are local players, so they don't require homestays. And so, we took all that into account. We were able to, do some things on the budget side of things, and, it just made sense. And so, we're excited to at least offer some local soccer. Obviously, ideally, we would like to still have the men's and the women's, going throughout. But, we're happy with the fact that we were able to, salvage what we have and continue to build it.
So speaking of those players for this season, I know that you guys kind of build your roster in a variety of ways, but I know one thing you guys implemented was open tryouts at the beginning of last month in May. Talk to me a little bit about how those went. Did they meet your expectations? What were you guys kind of looking for through those?
Yeah, it's been weird. Our open tryouts, as I said earlier, the spring seasons of the college seasons kind of slowed things down. And so our tryouts have actually, whereas in the past it was a weekend, we would identify, our 30 or so players. And, after that, we would still kind of bring in a player here or there. Whereas this year, we had the opening weekend. It was a small crowd. So it's really been the last, week and a half, 2 weeks that, the training sessions have been tryouts as well. The players have come in at different times. There's still a couple players on a couple of the local JUCOs that are playing their national tournaments this weekend. So it's kind of been a weird season, in terms of player selection, but we're happy with the ones that have come out. We're excited with the ones that are there. They're working hard. So, I don't want to say it didn't meet my expectations because I guess I kind of knew what to expect going into it, but we haven't had the numbers like we've had in the past.
So in terms of the players who are on the roster here, who will get started this upcoming weekend, talk to me a little bit about the team and the style that you guys play. Obviously, it's been a year since you guys have gotten out on the pitch, so either people haven't remembered or they're going to experience the Lions for the first time. Talk a little bit to me about how you guys play.
Sure, it's we like to play. I call it an exciting style. I mean, we like to keep the ball. The players that we select, we want to make sure can they play the way we want. In terms of some of the tendencies that we'll see from them, and or B, are they willing to learn or adapt, and so we like to keep the ball. We like to build from the back. I tell the players, matter of fact, I've been talking to the players the last couple training sessions. I'm always looking for the 100% ball. I don't want to just bang the ball down the pitch and rely on the 50-50. I want to play the feet. So we're gonna build out of the back. We're gonna bring numbers forward, and then once we get in the attacking third, our players, we're gonna look creative. You don't want to take a creativity, or you don't want to take a dribble away or a touch away from a player who is used to having the ball. I think all in all, it's a style that does take a little time, because we're also talking of players that are coming from different systems. As I said before, the players have been great with learning and listening, and so it's been going good from that standpoint.
So you mentioned a little bit about how it's, you're still young in terms of the lifeline of the club so far. The women's team's only played a couple seasons, but you've been very successful in those 2 seasons. You were Franchise of the Year in your inaugural season and also had a great record in 2019. Now coming back to the WPSL after a little bit of a layoff, obviously everyone's kind of starting off on the same foot in terms of having to deal with the delay. But in terms of getting back to things in this league, what are your expectations?
Yeah, I tell you, we've been blessed the last couple of years with some great players, and as I said before, 95%, maybe even a little higher of our players are local players. So it's just a tribute to the players around the area, and the levels that they bring into it already. So we've been very happy with those who've come. It's been very exciting to be a part of their process, and so we do want to continue to focus on that. I will say this year, coming into this year, we don't have one player. We don't have one returning player. Everybody's new. They're all new to the squad. We only have one player, and she just came in recently, who has some WPSL experience. So I think there's going to be some learning curves the first couple matches. Just to the to the level of play. The league is very competitive. Our conference is very competitive. And so I think there's going to be a learning curve from those players who, are coming off of their seasons to adapting to the level of play that the WPSL presents. So we're still excited. We still have high expectations. As you said, we've been very fortunate and very blessed to have some success. And so we still want to build on that. But we know that at the time early on, we're not going to necessarily sprint out of the gates. It's going to be a learning curve. So we're excited, and we'll see where it goes.
And real quickly, talking about a specific opponent in your guys' conference, talk to me a little bit about what it's like to have another St. Louis area club and Fire and Ice Soccer Academy in the same conference and competing against them. What's that type of relationship like?
Well, there are rivals, of course, and they're one of the main reasons why we, got in the league. Lindsay's done a great job with them, and they've been kind of the standard of the league in terms of success. And so, we try to model our player selection based on competing with them. And I think from a fan base, at any point in time when the two teams meet, there's anywhere from 22 local players on the pitch at one time, and a lot of those players come from the backyards of the fans. And so I think from a fan standpoint, it's exciting. From a coaching standpoint, it just, it makes us raise our level, or at least work to raise our level, because again, anytime you can get a result against them, it's a good result. And we've been very fortunate in the games that we've played to be competitive with them. And so we kind of gauge our player selection based on, again, competing with them.
Coach, I want to pivot here real quickly, talk a little bit about you and have some self-reflection here. You've been with the Lions since 2001 in a variety of roles. You've been involved with the academy. You've been an assistant coach on the men's team, and of course now the head coach of the women's team. In terms of your coaching career, I want to ask a little bit about the development of yourself and how you coach, and also a little bit about some of the things that you've learned over this time.
Sure, yeah. Same thing. I just had a meeting with some coaches, matter of fact, a few days ago, and I kind of went through my resume, and one of the things that I wanted to point out with them is it wasn't that I was trying to toot my horn with the resume as much as I was just trying to show them, again, how blessed I am with the opportunities that I've had. I've been with the youth side of things since 2001, as you said, and the Lions around the same time. I was fortunate enough to spend a couple of years on the bench with Tony in the St. Louis Ambush. And so I think from each level that I've been able to take away little nuances of the game and what it takes for the player to be at that level, but also what type of player is at that level. And so I've been able to learn and listen, every step of the way. And I think it just gives me confidence more than anything to know that I can help these players. Tony's been, he's been like a father figure to me, and he's been obviously, very instrumental in my career and very instrumental in my development. And, I'm proud to be where I am. Obviously, just like the players, though, I'm always learning and trying to advance myself as well.
So something obviously you guys have been learning about over the past few years would be in terms of support of the club, right? It's not just about the soccer aspect of it on the pitch. It's about promoting the Lions and growing those relationships, inside the game. I think St. Louis, it's a great place, and it does a great job of supporting local soccer. You guys have been able to build relationships over the years with fans outside of families and friends of players. Talk to me a little bit about how you've been able to do that, how you've been able to connect with those fans, and how can you continue to build upon it during these times?
Yeah, I think it's word of mouth. I think it's word of mouth, from the players basically selling the product, right? I mean, if we can think that we're doing it the right way, and if families and players can come through and enjoy their time, essentially they talk about the product. They talk about the club. Tony's had the youth club since 1994, and so he's touched a lot of families' lives. And, what we're seeing now is a lot of the players that are coming through, their parents or relatives have come through and played, in the club in some fashion as well, and now with the men's team, 15 years on the men's side, in the USL, we're seeing many players who may not, they may not all go on and advance in the game, but what we're seeing now is they're getting into coaching, and you run into them on the pitch, and they're coaching. And so I think a lot of it is just doing what you do because you think it's right, believing in what you're doing, not necessarily taking anybody else's way for doing things, and then allowing it to, again, sell itself. And I've been very proud to be a part of it.
So let's kind of implement a little bit of that word of mouth philosophy here to wrap this up. You guys have got your first two matches this weekend, but of course the big one that St. Louis fans would be interested in would be your home opener, which will be this Sunday, I believe at 5 p.m. out there at the soccer complex. For those fans who it's been a while, or for fans who have never experienced the Lions and are looking to get into it this season, talk to me a little bit about the setup of your home matches and what fans can expect and what some of those information that they need to know about.
Yeah, you can find our schedule on our website, St. Louis Lions, WPSL.com. We have 5 home matches and 5 away matches. We have, matter of fact, 8 of those matches are in June, so it's a crazy June. We'll finish up with a home and away in July. Again, you can find those dates online there. It seems like forever since we've had team on the stadium pitch out there, and it's a beautiful field. It's in great condition. We're looking forward to it. We host FC Pride, which is a new opponent for us this season. Matter of fact, we are in a new conference. We do have Fire and Ice still with us, but we have 8 other new teams to go along with that. So we're doing our research on the teams, but we're excited to host those guys, and we hope that everybody comes out and checks us out.
Well, again, very excited to have you guys back this season. Looking forward to, again, the new matchups that you'll have and, of course, getting back out there and representing St. Louis. So, again, very excited. Lions, again, opening up their 2021 WPSL season this weekend with their home opener on Sunday night. Head coach Geoff Lorimier, thank you so much again for joining me this week on the show.
Hey, thanks for having us. We appreciate your time.
My thanks to Coach Lorimer for joining me on the show. That'll do it for this episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're looking for even more content, go check out the latest episode of Atletico TV and our experience at Amsterdam Tavern during the Champions League final. Also, I've gotten back into writing. If you haven't heard, you can find me at bgn.fn, the Beautiful Game Network, where I'll be writing and covering Euro 2020 here this summer. Very excited. Euros next week. I'll have a lot of coverage there in the lead up to the tournament. You got the U.S. men's national team involved with the CONCACAF Nations League. Of course, a lot of great soccer going on here in this country. So looking forward to covering it on next week's episode. Have a great weekend.